Hello ladies and gentlemen, as always I'm your host Airsoft and welcome of course to Murica Month, a rapid fire review. This one is more of an angry rapid fire review because dear fucking god. Okay, before I continue, do know now that I'm trying to cover a mod which is America Rising, an Enclave story mod. This mod is actually really cool and presents a very awesome idea where of course the sole survivor literally meets the early remnants of the Enclave. And I mean pre-war Enclave, not the Enclave we know and love. Well, some of us love, because America. Or there are some of us who are, of course, New California Republic lovers. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, this thing offers a cool idea in terms of a story. It offers the idea of whether or not, you know, this sort of thing could happen, this sort of faction could come about. And it offers a very good fanfiction idea. There are tons of fanfictions out there which act, well, when I'm saying ton, there are very limited few that actually use this idea. Or at least use this mod as a basis. And on fanfiction.net, there are very good, well-crafted stories with this mod. A lot of them being gate fanfictions. And yes, I do mean that, gate fanfictions. However, on Wattpad, apparently this one author took the idea, because I can only guess because I haven't talked to the author, and dear fucking Christ, I know when he sees this, when they, I can't assume their fucking gender, see this review, already they're probably going to have a bit of an issue with me at most. I only hope this video actually helps them out in terms of actually correcting their shit.
Of course!
Unlike Shadow Trooper, who actually took the gate idea and basically let it be modern US in the wasteland, and yes, I will be covering the meeting chapter that Shadow Trooper has made in another rapid fire review, as well as giving my thoughts on that. I do know now that this thing isn't the only thing he's done. In reality, there was, of course, another fiction he made, which is Code fucking Geass, called America's Revenge. And while, yes, there is another one out there made of it, both have grammatical errors, both are laughable and comically bad, and it's just a train wreck to witness in terms of grammar.
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it? Yes!
The author in question, of course, is none other than Dueller, D-E-W-E-L-R. It is literally called Gate, therefore the Enclave fought there. I'm sorry, therefore?
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it? Yes!
It's thus. Thus. Not therefore. Thus. Or, hell, best one yet, go with the actual fanfiction.net titles of Thus the Enclave fought there, or The Enclave fought there, or The Enclave went there. Hell, there's a Kaiserreich story, which literally is the Pacific States of America, the PSA, actually going into the gate and meeting the Otherworld America. And of course, or not really, my bad, they didn't go meet the Otherworld America. No, they didn't, no. They actually went in there and they brought over people and they started loving the American culture. They started loving the Western style. They started getting Stetsons and all this sort of stuff, and that's another rapid fire review for another fucking full-on review. No, today we're talking about this bullshit here of Gate, therefore the Enclave fought there by this person, which, by the way, as of time of recording this, is at 14.3 thousand reads.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
340 favorites in 15 chapters.
I have several questions.
One of which is a bullshit 4th of July special chapter that is ungodly fucking
bullshit!
You know what? Why don't I just go ahead and talk about this? Because I want to make this into a rapid-fire review. Fuck that, let's just make it into an actual full-on review.
I don't like where this is going.
Dear God, where do I even start with this thing? So the whole story actually follows the fanfiction.net stories, where a gate opens up in Boston, and they come through, and blah-de-blah-blah. Unlike, of course, the well-written version of that, this one is absolutely asinine. Because I'm going to go ahead and just talk about some of the grammar errors, because there are grammatical errors out the ass on this son of a bitch. And the absolute story structure is comical at best. I mean, my God, this thing makes What? What was that one book? What was that? Oh yeah, Emperor Teresa? Teresa? Empress Teresa looked like Shakespeare compared to the grammar out of this thing. And I know my own Wattpad stories have some grammatical errors, don't get me wrong, because I had to write between a phone and a laptop, but at least I try to go back and fix them. Where this person apparently just does it in one go and just releases the chapters willy-fucking-nilly, or just does a full-on copy and paste, because when actually reading between the two chapters of fanfiction.net and this Wattpad version, I started seeing similarities, and full-on just straight-up copy and pasting of whole sentences, whole conversations, everything.
What? Are you out of your mind?
Oh, but it gets better. It gets fucking better, because guess what? Just when you thought this shit show couldn't get any worse, this person throws in an unneeded, unwarranted sex scene.
Excuse me, what?
Between the medic and the sole survivor.
Bullshit! Bullshit!
Now don't get me wrong, in the fanfiction.net stories, yes, there was a romance plot, and yes, that was actually fully fledged and done very well. Unlike here, where it's not, it feels forced, and the sex scene is forced as well. You don't have to do a sex scene in a book, in a story, unless it makes fucking sense. And even then, you forcing it, and yes, it feels forced, it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't flow well, doesn't make sense.
1 hour later.
Look, I'm saying that it doesn't have to be forced into a story. I'm just saying that if you're going to put something like that in a story, it needs to at least be coherent with the plot. It needs to add to the story. It needs to do something to impact the character development. Sadly, the author doesn't actually care about that, or at least from what I'm assuming from the actual reading of this dumpster fire. Instead, just threw it in there because, I don't know, I guess the author wanted to have it in there, or the author wanted to force it in there. Hell if I know. All I know is that it's pointless, it's worthless, it doesn't add to the story, doesn't add to character development, and is wholly not needed. Moving on, though, to the actual main meat and potatoes of this thing. While, yes, it does follow the Gate storyline as a whole, a lot of it is still somewhat idiotic. A lot of it is still somewhat paint by the numbers, and wholly just spews laziness. Again, I get it if you want to try and it be a fanfiction, but at the same time, I've read good fanfictions where they actually have transformed the story, have actually done good, and it just not be a copy and paste storyline. You can do good stories with what you have. Again, if I had to bring up a good example, it's going to have to be The Freedom We Choose, and that story was really good. It transformed the medium, and while, yes, Japan, or at least modern-day Japan, from the actual Gate anime was not there, it still transformed the story to be somewhat entertaining, to be somewhat good, to be its own whole entity. And again, I love it. I like it. Hell, the fanfiction.net versions of these stories, where the Enclave being in the Wasteland, have their own good entities, have their own good storylines. And I would recommend you to go read those instead of this one. And by God, it still pains me the fact that this story exists. But I have to review it, so one of those things. But continuing on, moving to the actual big thing that I know a lot of you probably have been wanting to know and wait for is the diet session. And dear God, is this a train wreck again. Okay, here's how it goes. So, in the original story, in the original anime, because of the fire dragon attack, some civilians were killed. And of course, there is a political agenda to push to try and more or less defame the military, to try and push a political agenda, to try and make the military out to be the bad guys. Basically, any sort of politics ever. However, it gets better. Because, unlike the original story, this one, there is no reaction to the heavily armored individual. There's no reaction to the enclaved officer dressed individual. Instead, we have to wait and go through the paint-by numbers of Rory, of course, Rory Mercury, the demigoddess, having to call out the politician and the reaction of them being old. However, when it finally gets to the sole survivor and him telling his age, they have a general reaction. And then that's when we get to the B-plot, and we actually hear this fucking thing. Before I continue, please do understand that, while yes, I understand that everyone has their own creative liberties, please do know that if you do something, it must be good. It must be well written. And the grammar up to this point has been anything but good. And what is to come is lazy, cringy, and just horrid at best. I will be bringing up a good example of a better made story in the time coming. But here's what happens. As soon as the diet meeting begins with the Enclave section, they begin revealing stuff. And the one actual added tidbit I did like was that Japan was invaded and occupied by the Red Chinese. And that's the one bit I actually did like about it. The rest, not so much. Because it gets stupid. It gets really stupid from here. And I want to get angry. I really do want to raise my anger, but apparently my blood pressure is something I should watch for, so here's what happens. The Enclave president shows up. They start explaining the wasteland, start talking about all the factions in the wasteland, and all this other stuff, and NATO finding out about this stuff, and even imploring the UN to send in aid and troops to help with the wasteland. And while, yes, this was an actual plot in the fanfiction version of this story, and yes, it ended, sadly, and we didn't get to see a continuation of it, here it feels forced. And even when Liberty Prime is brought on, apparently with his empowered speeches and all this stuff, China is pissed off and trying to get to the gate. America is emboldened, and right-wingers start marching in the streets, and I'm sorry. The moment he dropped about the right-wingers, I started losing interest in the story. I started losing any lasting credibility I had in it, any lasting investment I had in it, because as soon as you dropped in the right-winger stuff, that's when I knew that you weren't taking this seriously. Because unlike most, if Liberty Prime was an actual thing, there wouldn't be a right-wing or left-wing. It'd be Americans. Because as soon as Liberty Prime's speeches are played, America would be emboldened. The sense of patriotism would come back. That sense of nationalism would come back. It wouldn't matter if you'd be left, right, centrist, or otherwise, you'd have that emboldened nationalistic pride. The only people who would be pissed off would be communists, would be socialists. I'm sorry, but you really think America would be wholly divided still? At this whole idea of left and right wing after Liberty Prime would be empowering its speeches, showing off its amazing American might, what American industry can do? No. No, we wouldn't be divided. We'd be more united than ever. And the whole idea and the fact of nuclear Armageddon, no, I don't care who you are on the political spectrum. Nuclear Armageddon is something we can all agree we do not want to happen. And nuclear wasteland is something we agree we do not want to happen. So, if you disagree with that statement, you might be considered on a watch list in some countries if you actually want a nuclear Armageddon. And not in the ironic sense. The fact that the president of the Enclave is there and nobody fucking saw him come through the gate, nobody fucking encountered him through the gate, nobody did, makes no sense whatsoever. And then it gets better. Because then the President of the United States, who is that version of Trump, immediately gets on a plane, comes over to Japan, starts meeting with Matoy, and then goes and meets with the President of the Enclave. And then they get together, blah, blah, blah. By this point in time, my investment had reached an all-time low. And the best fucking part? The guy completely skips the hot springs battle. Completely skips everything. We don't get to see I mean, here's something you could have done. Author, here's something you could have done. Instead of the CIA trying to capture the otherworldly guests to try and get them to the U.S., instead they could have been acting as protection and working with the Enclave to help protect the Enclave officer that would be with them. Could have worked to protect them alongside the Japanese Rangers.
Dumbass! How much of a dumbass are you? In fact, if you look up dumbass in the dictionary, you'll find a picture of... well, it should be you in there!
Instead of that awesome idea that could have worked and could have been a great set piece, you completely write off, completely skipped it, and just off into the absolute nothingness of the void. It is absolutely idiotic. The only silver lining out of this is the actual continuation where the fictions on fanfiction.net left off, which was after the diet session, where we actually get to see UN troops coming through the gate, going to the Wasteland Gate, and then completely dismounting and moving in to actually help out a lot of the Wasteland, helping out Diamond City, fighting feral ghouls. And among them are American peacekeepers, who even say that they lived in Boston. And as much as I want to praise this for that little bit, as much as I want to say thank you for continuing the story, I'm sorry, I cannot. No ounce of me can justify this grammatical, error-induced, headache-inducing, foaming at the mouth, absolute idiocracy that this is. I'm sorry. The decisions make no sense. The structures make no... It's idiotic. And, worst of all, there are better stories. It's clearly obvious the author does care, at least in the later half, but everything else about this makes no sense. From the unneeded scenes added, from the grammatical errors, from the structures of the damn thing, I do not recommend this story. If anything else, I want you to tell the author to fix their shit. I want you to actually contact the author, and if you can, offer as a proofreader. Help fix the grammatical errors. Help fix the story structure. Help fix this. Because at the end of the day, this thing is absolutely just...
I couldn't make this shit up. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. I'm sad that I lack the talent to make this shit up.
I've spoken my piece, ladies and gentlemen, and again, if you actually want to read this dumpster fire, or at least what I consider a dumpster fire in terms of grammatical errors and sentences and other shit that I've already pointed out that makes no goddamn sense, it is linked in the pinned comment down below. And if you guys like what I do, please consider donating, subscribing, and all that other good stuff. And knowing YouTube, they have already probably demonetized this video, or at least given it limited ad status. And as much as I want to say that this story was actually suggested by you, the viewers, no, I've just been sitting on this one, and after reading the 4th of July special, dear God, this needs some serious fixing. Anyway, thank you all for watching. As always, I've been Airsoft Al, and I will see all you lovely people in the next video, which will be Freedom Rings. Till next time. Later.